Related to that, I have shared a case study with you about the entry of Navras Telecom into the Omani market. Another case which I have requested you all, I'm sure you must have seen it on your WhatsApp group, that it is available on the internet, you can download it.
No, sir.
That is why you might
The
not have
teams
seen.
automatically inputs our attendance.
Okay. So there's a case of McDonald's success. And its entry into the international markets, how it has gained customer loyalty and brand loyalty over the years. So that is also a very, very interesting case study. So try to locate it and download it. Some of you might, and then you can share it in the class. And subsequently, we'll try to discuss. So coming back to our discussion, today, very briefly, we'll talk about the trade theories, because subsequently I'll try to give it to you as an assignment for presentation. I'll try to, request you to group yourselves and then make some presentations on the topics which are more relevant. So today, very briefly, we will discuss the different trade theories which have been put up by the economists or the academicians in the field of international business. And these trade theories, they answer some of the questions which often arise, which, often, kind of create some kind of queries into our minds. Some of these questions have been listed here in this present slide. I hope all of you can see this.
Yes, sir.
Is it visible? Okay. And you also have this presentation. I'm sure you have downloaded it from the web page of our department. So some of the questions says that why do some nations succeed and the others fail in the international competition? Why does a nation become the home base for successful international competitors in the industry? Why certain companies based in certain nations are able to overcome barriers to change and innovation? They are capable of consistent innovation and ruthlessly pursue improvement. So primarily, the question is differentiate between. Please mute your mic. Please mute your mic. Okay. So the basic question is about identifying factors which spell success for countries, for companies, for different organizations, and what are the factors which may, otherwise be responsible for the failure of the enterprise, especially in the international markets. So I want your response. Basic question is, why do some nations succeed and others fail? Why are some nations, they are very, proactive in terms of innovation, while the others remain as mere followers? So what is it? What are the factors which are responsible for, better performance of different countries and organizations? Yes, try to answer. What in your opinion is, uh, what is a possible answer?
So one of the things can be the resources, and
Yes.
the resources are the policies which is made by the government.
Okay. The resources.
Some
Very
nations get
true.
early adoption advantage. So if they
Very,
some new technology has come, so they adopt it early and they try to take advantage of it.
that is very, very true.
With political stability.
Political stability. Yes. What else?
Skilled workforce, skilled workforce.
You're not clear. Can you be more clear? So, very true. Yes. So, very rightly, some of you have said that the availability of natural resources, political stability, or some earlier advantage. It's a very, very important point, in fact. You know, some of the earliest industrialized nations like England, like France, like Germany, where the industrial revolution took place, they continue to remain in lead with the rest of the world. Some of the countries where most of the earliest innovations in industrial technology, in agricultural technology have taken place. So they are still much ahead of the other developing nations or less developed nations. So that gap continues because at a time, as a student of history, I want to tell you that at the time when England was passing through the phases of industrial revolution, when it was developing machines and different tools and equipments for the development of industries, its colonies like India, they were passing through the phase of, you know, deurbanization. Its cities were being converted into the agrarian, land or agricultural farmhouse for the developed, you know, British Empire. So this is a very important thing which we have to bear in mind. But then at the same time, it is equally important that each country, each nation has some competitive advantages. It has some natural endowments which need to be gainfully utilized, which have to be harnessed in the best possible way. And that is why some of the trade theorists have tried to explain in their own way that how the different countries of the world can engage in trading activities in how they can gainfully engage in the process of exchanging their products primarily, so as to, create a win-win situation. Although the initial theories, like the theory of mercantilism, as it is here mentioned here in this slide, it was a theory which was based on the system of exploitation. It was a system which promoted colonialism, that some of the rich and powerful nations, with the help of their navy and other forces, whichever were present at that time, I'm talking about the mid 17th century, or more appropriately, if I say specific period, it's something like, it would be something like the years 1750s onwards, where we find that this was in the garb of, or in the, in the cover of free trade. What was being promoted was that the powerful nations become more powerful by exploiting the countries which they had made into colonies, which they had turned into colonies for producing raw materials or for producing agricultural products for the industrialized countries. So this was definitely, and even in the present times, we do find this kind of situation, but it has assumed different kind of, I would say it has put on a different dress, but the underlying philosophy remains the same. We call it as imperialism of the markets, imperialism of the finances, despite the fact that we are all talking about the benefits and advantages of the world trade and globalization and the expansion of multinational corporations. But at the same time, we also realize that under the, under the guise of world trade expansion, we also find that somewhere the intention is otherwise. It is, the intention remains to exploit the poor countries. I am sure, as active citizens of the world, you must be aware, you must be watching documentaries. They're widely available. How the the multinational corporations, they are eyeing the rich resources of poor African countries, whether it is Kenya, the oil resources of Kenya, the oil resources in Nigeria, and so on. I'm just quoting a few examples. By the mode of expansion of FDIs and other international investments, again, the underlying idea is to gain as much control on the resources of the less developed countries or the poorer countries. But we'll not go into such details. I mean, I don't want to get into the, the criticism phase. We are trying to discuss the different theories. Some of them you might have already done. Those of you who have a background in commerce or in economics, you must have already, discussed theories like the absolute advantage theory or comparative advantage theory. Anybody having an idea can share with the class what exactly this pertains to. Yes. Yes, any idea? Give me some idea about what do you understand by this absolute advantage or comparative advantage theories? Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. आप लोगों में से कोई इकोनॉमिक्स बैकग्राउंड वगैरह के नहीं है, इकोनॉमिक्स के, कॉमर्स के, जिन्होंने ये चीज पढ़ी हो इंटरनेशनल इकोनॉमिक्स में? Okay, let's get back to our discussion. So, basically, the idea is that some of the economists have come up with the different theories. Some of them they belong to the old school, whereas some theories we will discuss, they are relatively modern, they are relatively contemporary. So, basic idea is that through the free trade, where there is, this was propounded by Adam Smith, a very well-known economist, in his book written in 1776. And the book's title was The Wealth of Nations. And he talked about the theory of free trade, wherein the government should not interfere or intervene in the affairs of international business. It should not intervene in the inflow and outflow of goods. It should not intervene in the inflow and outflow of gold, which is related with the payments or the receipts in lieu of the goods which have been exchanged. And this theory propounded, I'll not go into details, that is not the scope of our course, that whatever disequilibrium or whatever disturbances that might arise in the import and export of goods, in the inflow and outflow of gold, would be automatically corrected, right? Automatically restoration of equilibrium will take place, and there is no need for the government to intervene or to, play as a controlling or a regulating body. So that was the basic idea, not to expose quotas, not to expose restrictions, not to impose any kind of customs or duties. That is what the free trade propounded. And the benefits of the trade would allow the countries, we all know, that you can have the best of the produce of different countries through the process of exchange. You can sell your products in the international market and also buy from the international markets the best products which are available. So that is the basic idea of trade. And try to focus more on those products and services. I would now add services also, which you can, which you are best at producing, which you have, for which you have developed a special competence, for which you have a competitive advantage. And that advantage can be in terms of quality. That competitive advantage can be in terms of, you are able to make a product which is of best quality. Like, say, for example, if we talk about the Indian carpets, so they are considered to be of a very good quality. Or maybe the handlooms, the Banarsi saris, so the Indian silk. So something which no other people can, or which no other country can imitate. So one thing is the quality. Other thing can be that, okay, the standard of quality is maybe moderate, but at the same time your cost is very low. So you can have competitive advantage in terms of quality, you can have competitive advantage in terms of cost. So at one go you can have a differentiator in the form of quality, the other time you can have a differentiator in terms of cost. So, and then there are more things, like, for example, timely delivery. These are something which have now become the basics. Timely delivery of the products, so this is something which has become a prerequisite. It does not give you any advantage or any specific edge over your competitors, but primarily you differentiate yourselves against your competitors in terms of two parameters. One is the quality and the different features that come with your product, and the other is the cost, right? If you are able to produce a good quality product, a standard product at a lower cost of production. So the first and foremost theory which we are going to discuss is the theory of absolute advantage. And for the sake of developing and understanding, we'll consider a case of two countries, country X and Y, and two products, product A and B, right? As it is mentioned here, as it is shown here in this figure, that country X can make 1 unit of product A in 10 hours and 1 unit of product B in 20 hours. Whereas the situation is reversed in country Y, where it is able to produce 1 unit of product A in 20 hours and 1 unit of product B in 10 hours. So it is much logical, it is much reasonable that country X can devote most of its time in producing product A because it is able to produce it in less time. Now here we are considering just one factor of production, say that the labor hours, the man hours, right? How much time, how much labor hours are used in making a product. So we find that country X is more efficient at making product A, whereas country B is more efficient at making product B. So guided by this theory of absolute advantage, what can be suggested is that country X should devote its resources in making product A, while country Y should focus on product B, and subsequently they should engage in the process of exchange of product A against product B. They can decide about the ratio in which they are going to say, exchange the products. So through the trade, they can exchange these, whatever surplus production they have, whatever production they have in access to their domestic consumption, they can exchange with each other. So this is a more, it is an approach which is very much logical, and we can understand this. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
अच्छा, इसमें दो चीजें लिखी हुई है शुरू में. एक चीज लिखी नेचुरल एडवांटेज और एक चीज लिखी हुई है एक्वायर्ड एडवांटेज. हाउ डू यू डिफरेंशिएट बिटवीन द टू?
Sir, natural advantage means some country may be rich in that are required to make a product.
Very good. Very true.
And acquired advantage means they have the technology to produce a good, better technology than other countries.
Yes, very true. Acquired advantage can be in terms of technology, in terms of skill, in terms of training, right? Something which you do not have, but you acquire it subsequently, right? In terms of technology transfer, in terms of training of manpower, in terms of consultancy that you take from the other countries. So very, very appropriately explained that natural advantage is something that you have been, blessed with. You have it in your own country. You have been blessed by God with those resources, whether it is a particular kind of climate. Say, for example, for the cultivation of saffron, a specific tract in Kashmir is there. Some of the best saffron is cultivated there. Then in Iran also, very specifically, it is not grown everywhere. In Iran also, you have a specific place where you can grow saffron. So this is, this is the specific climatic conditions, specific some kind of uniqueness in the soil of that place, which makes it suitable for the cultivation of saffron, जिसे हम केसर कहते हैं या ज़ाफ़रान कहते हैं. So this is, this is a natural blessing. This is a blessing from the God. And then, as we have discussed, some of the skills, which need to be acquired, some of the advantages have to be acquired. In many countries are such where maybe the skilled labor is not there. So you need to import it. You need to acquire it. Either you create that skill set in your own country by training your people, or you import people. You import the expats who will work there, right? So what we see, this was a very simple case considering two products and two countries. So each of them, they choose the product which they are best suited to produce, and then engage in the exchange process. Now, another theory which is based upon obviously the initial idea proposed by Adam Smith in the absolute advantage theory. Now comes the second type of theory, that is the theory of comparative advantage. Now this is a situation where a country might be good at making 2 or 3 or 4 products much better than what others can produce. But then it has to make a decision that out of those different products which it is good at making, which particular or which specific product it should try to focus on. So now here we see again 2 countries and 2 product example. We see here that 1 unit of product A, 1 unit of product B, if they are being produced by country X, so for product A you require 80 hours, for product B you require 90 hours. So total, if a country X is making 1 unit of A and 1 unit of B. So in total, it would need 170 man hours or labor hours. Similarly, for country Y, for 1 unit of product A, it is 120 hours, and for product B, it is 100 hours. In total, it becomes 220 hours. So now, as such, if we compare product A, we find that country X has an advantage because it is able to make it in 80 hours as compared to country Y, which is able to make it in 120 hours. And if we come to product B, again country X has an advantage because it is able to make it in 90 hours, whereas country Y is able to make it in 100 hours. So in such a situation, country X has an absolute advantage in both the cases, in case of product A as well as product B. But then we have to look at where is this advantage more. Right? Even here we can see, if we compare in terms of product A, country X and country Y, the difference in terms of the labor hours is 40 labor hours, 120 minus 80. In terms of product B, the difference is just 10 hours, that is 100 minus 90. So in such a situation, you can easily decipher, you can easily make out that it is more advantageous for country X to make product X and leave product B for country Y to specialize in, right? And then they can engage in the trade. The same thing which I have tried to explain is summarized in this table 3, that if country A is it's making 2 units of product A, so in total it would require 160 hours, right? If country Y is making 2 units of product B, so it would require 200 hours. So comparing from the table 2, we find that in case 1, for country X, there is a saving of 10 hours, that is 170 hours minus 160 hours, you get a saving of 10 hours. For country Y, there is a saving of 20 hours, that is 220 minus 200 hours. And overall, there is a saving of 30 hours because the total hours in the previous case, as shown in table 2, is 390 hours minus 360 hours that we see here in this case. So there is a saving. So overall, there is a gain which can be shared between the countries through the process of trading. So in a way, this is a somewhat advanced version of the theory of absolute advantage, that despite a country is having absolute advantage in more than one case of different products, still it should try to focus on those products which it is best, or in which it has the specialization to make, whether it is in terms of, now here we are talking about the labor hours, so which is directly related to the cost. the time which is required to make or manufacture a product. So naturally, we pay to the human resources on the basis of the time which they are spending in making the products. So naturally, if you are able to save your man hours, you will be able to save on the cost which is required to make that particular product. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So there are other theories also. Now these two theories are considered as the classical theories or the old school theories of international business, and they speak very specifically in the favor of the international trade. Subsequently, we will be discussing some theories like international product life cycle, which is a very, very relevant theory of international trade, and it is something which is related to what you have already discussed in product life cycle. Can somebody recall what exactly is product life cycle before we wind up today's session?
Sir, it refers to the various stages through which the product goes, which includes the introduction stage, the maturity stage, and the decline stage.
Okay, Yash. So that was very nice. So it's about the product passes through the different stages, that is introduction, growth, maturity, and finally the decline. Similarly, in the international markets also, we find that the innovative products, the new products, they are initially introduced in some of the most developed nations, some of the most modern nations, some of the nations which are wealthy, where people have the purchasing power to buy a very, very new something which is very much premium. So what happens is that when that product gains acceptance, or maybe once that product has kind of reached the saturation in these top markets, in this top layer of the market, it is subsequently launched in the other countries. So it gets a new lease of life, right? At the time when it was reaching saturation in the most developed countries, now it is launched in the other nations, like some developed countries, right? So at the time when it was reaching saturation,